Let me start with the tone of the campaign, and you have addressed this a couple of times in specifically having to do with Donald Trump's rallies. Let me play two different explanations you've given to this, one from the debate and one from Friday. Here it is.
We've seen for 7 years a president who believes he's above the law, who behaves like an emperor. And when you have a campaign that disrespects the voters, when you have a campaign that affirmatively encourages violence, you create an environment that only encourages this sort of nasty discord.
Is Donald Trump the one that's responsible for the tone of his rallies, and Donald Trump alone?
Well, let's be clear. Listen, the protesters have no right to engage in violence. They have no right to threaten violence. And these protesters, whether it's Black Lives Matter or Bernie Sanders, who are coming in just trying to shout down any speaker, that's not free speech. The First Amendment gives you a right to speak, but it doesn't give you a right to silence others. And so the protesters are behaving abusively and wrong. But at the end of the day, in any campaign, responsibility starts at the top. And it is not beneficial when you have a presidential candidate like Donald Trump telling his supporters, punch that guy in the face.
What would you advise Donald Trump to do? Because this is reflecting on the Republican Party as a whole, or it could, considering he's currently the frontrunner.
Listen, I think every candidate ought to aspire towards civility, towards decency, towards bringing us together. I don't think we should be using angry and hateful rhetoric. I don't think we should be cursing at people. And I'll tell you, listen, I've been troubled. I mentioned at the debate this week, I'm troubled by the rallies that Donald holds, where he asks all the people there to raise their hand and pledge their support to him. This is America. We don't pledge allegiance to a man. We pledge allegiance to a flag. Right. We pledge our support for the Constitution. But that is something that you see kings and queens doing of their subjects, and all of this is part and parcel of the same thing. We need a president who understands he works for the people. Listen, I am running to pledge my support to you, not the other way around. And I hope that all of the candidates reflect that understanding.
I want you to react to something here that President Obama said at a fundraiser, responding to the tone of Donald Trump rallies. Here it is, sir.
And what's been happening in our politics lately, it's not an accident. For years we've been told we should be angry about America, and that the economy is a disaster, and that we're weak, and that compromise is weakness, and that you can ignore science, and you can ignore facts, and say whatever you want about the president, and feed suspicion about immigrants and Muslims and poor people and people who aren't like us.
That's the president essentially saying this has been happening for years, for most of his term.
You know, Chuck, Barack Obama is a world-class demagogue. That language there is designed to divide us. No, Mr. President, we're not angry at that. We're angry at politicians in Washington, including you, who ignore the men and women who elected you, who have been presiding over our jobs going overseas for 7 years, who have been cutting deals that are enriching the rich and powerful, the special interests and the big corporations, while working men and women are seeing their wages stagnating. And he talks about immigrants and Muslims. Mr. President, we're mad at a president who wants to bring in Syrian refugees who may be infiltrated by ISIS, and you're unwilling to be commander-in-chief and keep us safe. So don't engage in attacking the people like the president did. I'll tell you, that language is the kind of self-righteous moralizing from the president that makes people angry.
You think that's worse than what Donald Trump? You think that's worse than what Donald Trump's been doing?
To be honest, I think it's very much the same. They're both engaging in demagoguery. We need instead a president who wakes up every day working for the hardworking taxpayers. If I'm president, Chuck, my focus is going to be the hardworking taxpayers, bringing back jobs and economic growth. We're going to do that by repealing Obamacare, by passing a simple flat tax, by abolishing the IRS, by pulling back the regulations that are killing small businesses.
Let me talk about your path to the nomination. Isn't it fair to say that this is your strategy is to get to a contested convention because you can't win this before the convention?
Not remotely. Not remotely, Chuck. And
the math
if you
doesn't
look
work,
at the numbers,
sir.
It works perfectly. In order for anyone to be the nominee, you need 1,237 delegates. There are only two of us possible path to get there, me and Donald Trump. I've got 362. He has 99 more than I do right now. Now, and nobody else is remotely close. Now, what this primary has been about for the past year has been narrowing and narrowing and narrowing the field. When we get head-to-head, not only do I beat Donald, but I beat him squarely. What we're seeing happening right now is we're seeing Republicans uniting behind our campaign. Now, a lot of the media focuses on Florida and Ohio. What the numbers are clear, if Kasich and Rubio had dropped out already, we would be beating Donald Trump right now in both Florida and Ohio.
You know our Florida poll, the combined number of you and Rubio would be able to overtake Trump. But you've been campaigning in Florida. Rubio has a better shot at beating him. Denying Trump the delegates is what you need to do in Florida, is it not?
No, we're not engaged in this delegate denial strategy that came out of the Washington establishment because they have dreams of a brokered convention dropping their favorite Washington candidate in to win. That would be a disaster. The people would revolt. The only way to beat Donald Trump is beat him at the ballot box. And there's only one candidate that can get to 1237 and beat Donald Trump, and that's me.
You've said some tough things on Trump. Why are you comfortable supporting him as the nominee if he ends up the nominee?
Well, listen, I pledged at the outset I will support the Republican nominee, whoever it is.
Why is your pledge? Why are you making a pledge to a? Why are you making a pledge to a party and not to the voters?
Because Hillary Clinton or Bernie Sanders would be a manifest disaster. If Hillary is the president, we will lose the Supreme Court for a generation. The Second Amendment will be written out of the Bill of Rights. We'll lose our religious liberty. We'll be buried in debt. And our kids will remain coming out of school without jobs, without opportunity. Hillary would be disastrous for this country. So the answer is not simply to resign yourself to Donald Trump, who would be a disaster as well. The answer is to beat Donald.
Given everything you've just said about you still will support him if that's what the Republican Party does.
You know, Chuck, I'm a very simple man. When I give my word for something, I follow through and do what I said.